Greetings to the members and attendees of the Lehigh Seventh-day Adventist Church. This is Pastor Hoilette connecting with you in these difficult times. I sincerely hope that you and your families are keeping safe and that you are doing well. Many of you inquire as to my well-being, and I appreciate that. You know, since I fall into the category of the susceptible population, I want you to know that I have been abiding by the directives until the storm passes over. So I'm staying safe and I'm keeping well. It's been a while since we have been together. However, I do hope it won't be too long before we can come together again. I want to thank you for the many calls and text messages that have kept us connected and encouraged. I've enjoyed the blessings of having an opportunity to pray with so very many of you. I'm sure you have been following the news and have been possibly alarmed at the extent to which the coronavirus is spreading across our nation. At the time of my speaking to you, the numbers will far exceed what it was at the time my producing of this video took place. Over 400,000 cases now, and the death toll has risen rapidly over 10,000. I join with you in praying for the medical personnel of our church, the community around us, all those who are on the front lines of this pandemic. I urge you to continue to pray for them, and let's connect with them and encourage them. I've understood that there are 70 of our members who are medical or health services professionals. And so they're all out there needing our prayers for protection and for the ultimate PPEs. My heart also goes out to many families who are hurting for the loss of their loved ones. I'm also pained that family members are not able to even hold the hands of their loved ones while they're dying. The occurrence of the virus, which has swept the world, has forced us into a different mode of living and into a different mode of doing church. A recent editorial by Walter Kim puts it this way: we're being asked temporarily to convene remotely, but not to deny our faith or cease worshiping God. This we can continue to do very well. Over the Easter weekend, many churches are finding ways and means to communicate the message of the dying and risen Savior. And so I believe that in our church community, we must do the same as we continue church from the pulpit under Pastor Andre Campbell, and as we share the wonderful good news with our neighbors that Jesus indeed is risen again. I know you, along with me, have missed and will miss the fellowship and the ministry of presence in the coming weeks as we continue to worship through technology. Currently, as a Florida Conference Church, we are sheltering in place through to April 30th and until we receive further notice. I want to thank Pastor Andre for managing the pulpit on Sabbath for us. He has certainly been blessing us with the word, and I'm aware that a lot of us are tuning in. I hope we are all growing spiritually from the word. I thank Sister Kiss and her team, Ella Troy Campbell, the communication technology support that they have been providing for Pastor Andre. My desire today is to encourage you relevant to the context of reality in which we find ourselves. I want to encourage you as we move along this new journey in which God has allowed us to travel. Allow me to punctuate my talk with you by using a few scriptural passages that have come to the forefront during these times and put them in proper context for all of us. Firstly, Psalm 91, an extremely encouraging and straightforward psalm. This psalm deserves our daily use, and especially at this time, it maintains its appropriateness. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. What a powerful assurance we do have. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress. My God, in him will I trust. What a powerful commitment we make. The next verse says, surely he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. Watch that word pestilence. But what a powerful confidence that we abide. Verse 4, he shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. What a powerful trust we espouse. Well, verse 5 says, thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day. Powerful declaration which we receive, and it is continued in verse 6, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. What a powerful declaration again that we receive now to internalize. It's important that we take note of this word pestilence. It shows up twice. So let me unpack that for you. It means a fatal epidemic disease, a contagious disease, an infection, a sickness, an epidemic, a pandemic. And it is likened especially unto the bubonic plague, which was also known as the Black Death of 1347 to 1351. 225,000 people died all across Europe. The Bible directly speaks to our situation today. You have been reading the entire chapter over and over of Psalm 91. I encourage you to keep reading it and keep being encouraged by the powerful words of assurance that God gives us through the psalmist David in that psalm. But certainly this psalm reflects, in the context of these first few verses, the situation that we're in. And the message is, do not be afraid. You know, the Bible is very comforting to us, and it is very assuring. And as we go through this communication together this evening, I will show you some other highlights of the biblical narrative that joins with Psalm 91. Many years ago, we established the concept of practice points in Wednesday night prayer meetings as we read the writings of the Spirit of Prophecy, a term which originated around Dr. Georgette Hines. We encourage ourselves in prayer meeting to practice what we were learning daily so we could be in readiness for the coming of Christ. A proper understanding of the words of Christ in the Gospels of Matthew and Luke would suggest to us that the end is not yet, but these things must begin to come to pass as precursors to the end. We are now living in end times, still yet to approach the time of the end itself. We are steadily marching towards it. Therefore, it is time for us to practice, to use these moments as practice points. Two very clear and precise utterances of Jesus stand out again today. You know these scriptures, but like Peter, I am bound as your pastor to bring these things to your remembrance along the lines of what's happening today. And as Peter puts it, although you may already be established in the present truth, I have to remind you that these things are going to happen. Secondly, Matthew 24, 6-8 says, and ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are but the beginning of sorrows. So I want you to note here that we're not yet at the end of time, but we are at the beginning of sorrows. Luke 21:25 to 28 is another passage of scripture. Says, and there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. We have seen these things already. We have seen it oftentimes around the country in many, many years of repetitive activity. Men's hearts failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And then shall we see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. And when these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. The shaking of the powers of heaven is an interesting concept, and we're yet to see that. This is a time to refresh prophetic knowledge as given by the prophets of the Bible, and as well as Ellen White. Listen to what she says. And let's put some important things into perspective. Great Controversy, page 589. This passage speaks directly about Satan, who is the enemy of the soul. So Ellen White says, while appearing to the children of men as a great physician who can heal all their maladies, he will bring disease and disaster until populous cities are reduced to ruin and desolation. Watch that word, populous. Then she continues, even now he's at work in accidents and calamities by sea and by land, in great conflagrations. That's a lot of fire. We saw tremendous fires in Australia and California recently. In fierce tornadoes, they get fiercer and fiercer every year, and terrific hailstorms, in tempests and floods and cyclones and tidal waves and earthquakes in every place. And in 1,000 forms, Satan is exercising his power. She continues, he sweeps away the ripening harvest, and famine and distress follow. Notice in these last few days, brothers and sisters, we've been throwing away milk around the country and in Europe. And also there's been a problem in England with eggs. Eggs are being thrown out, they're rotten. In this country, tomatoes are rotten. So Satan sweeps away the ripening harvest, and famine and distress follow. But then it's the next line that caught my attention as I've spent more time going over prophecies that I've already studied and read. And indeed, in our prayer meeting some couple of years ago, we did the Great Controversy for 2 years. Listen to this statement. Still speaking about Satan. He imparts to the air a deadly taint, and thousands perish by the pestilence. These visitations are to become more and more frequent and disastrous. Destruction will be upon both man and beast. The earth mourneth and fadeth away, the haughty people do languish. The earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws and changed the ordinance and broken the everlasting covenant. She quotes Isaiah 24, verses 4 and 5. You can find this excerpt that I just read from Great Controversy, page 589. Read the entire chapter. Brothers and sisters, attendees and intermittent members and friends of Lehigh, this last excerpt from Sister White's writings is precisely and directly on point with that which we are experiencing right now with the coronavirus. It is indeed as if it is a deadly taint in the air because it's airborne and thousands are dying. It has been characterized as a pestilence. As she wrote elsewhere, let no one be misled or mistaken. The final movements will be rapid ones. The song says, we today are living, we're dwelling in a grand and awful time. In an age of ages telling, to be living is sublime. As you contemplate what you do these days when we're locked into the homes, into our houses, and we have to find things to do, and we play with our kids some more, and we make games, and we have dinners together, and we worship together on schedule. As we think about that, let us read the Holy Scriptures some more, and then I recommend that we read the writings of Ellen White. And I will add a book to Great Controversy, which is the book entitled Last Day Events. In Isaiah 26, verse 20, which is a third section of my scriptural punctuation that I bring to you today, he has asked us to enter into our chambers and shut our doors about us and hide ourselves, as it were, for a little moment until the indignation be overpassed. That's Isaiah 26:20. The text is employing the word indignation. And in employing that word, it specifically refers to God's indignation against his enemies and the enemies of Israel. At the time of that indignation, it was the slaying of the firstborn in Egypt. And God wanted his children to stay in their homes until he would pass over. That's found in Exodus 12:22-23. And he would pass through and smite the Egyptians. Blood was to be placed on the lintel and on the two side posts, and the Lord would pass over the door and would not suffer the destroyer to come into their houses to smite them. For secondary application, we could say that in the time of the last plagues, God invites his people to make him their hiding place, that he may be to them a refuge and strength and a very present help in trouble. You see, God's people were asked to go inside the homes, stay out from the outdoors, stay in there and sacrifice a lamb. And the father was to direct that process and get blood by stabbing a young lamb so that blood could ooze out into a pail, into a bucket, into a basin. And then he would take that blood, the father would, and put it on the doorposts and on the lintels. Why? Because when the angel of the Lord would pass over, destroying the Egyptians, those homes with a blood stain would be spared. You know, his people today should not fear, for God has always provided a way to protect his people. And the Bible says, for God had not given us a spirit of fear, but of love and of a sound mind. The reference in the text in Isaiah to "for a moment" is to state that the anger of God lasts but for a moment. The work of judgment is called the Lord's strange work. It takes place for a moment. But what I want you to know is this, that ironically, the hour of divine indignation, the moment of indignation against the Egyptians, against the wicked, is also the hour of deliverance and triumph for the people of God. Therefore, the call of Isaiah 26:20 is in the context of the plague of the slaying of the firstborn in Egypt. And by inference, we can extrapolate to the 7 last plagues, which is to come. The call of the text should be seen as a call for personal prayer and devotion. Go into your closets, go into your chambers, is what Isaiah says. It's a call for personal connection with God. It's a call for personal study. It's a call for personal revelation of ourselves. It's a call for personal preparedness as we receive protection from Him. It's a call for personal invitation into the power of His presence. As we are locked in, as we are locked down, as we are sheltered in place, let us use this moment for all these personal calls that we have. The text is a call for heavenly living on earth, a call for personal readiness for our deliverance as a people of God. So family, as we press forward in the strengthening of our faith and to boast to the overcoming of our fear, this must also be a time to recognize that faith does not negate wisdom. It is a time for us to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves, so we do not bring down persecution upon ourselves before God's appointed time. So let's not get ahead of ourselves, neither let us get ahead of the time when Michael shall stand up for his people. So currently, all peoples of the world are under the same attack by this virus, a pestilence. We as a remnant people are not being singled out as being targeted for our faith. Let us make that clear. Today also, it is clear to me that what we're currently facing in our world and in our nation and what we're doing and what we're being asked to do as citizens indeed, in a secondary manner, provides for us practice moments so we can be ready for what is still yet to come in our world and upon our world. Therefore, going back to that prayer meeting thought, I encourage you to recognize these times as practice moments, practice points for us as we look forward to the future of our church's experience. Because there's a time that is expected to come when we will be dispersed in the different ways in the proverbial wilderness, having to find ways of worshiping in small groups or in isolation. We are just in a precursor right now, but God is preparing for us a glorious future. Therefore, as members of the Lehigh SDA congregation, it is right for us to join with our Lehigh community and the surrounds of Fort Myers and Cape Coral and LaBelle and Naples and Esther and Port Charlotte and all those communities wherein we live and move and have neighborly connections by sharing and participating in the custody of our community for its safety. Such an approach allows us to advance the safety and wellness of our neighbors and ourselves. By so doing, when the time of trouble really comes, we will have built relationships so people in high places can vouch for us as God positions them so to do. And Ellen White promises us that there will be people who will be placed by God in these positions to vouch for us as a people of faith. The World Health Organization has sufficiently cautioned us along with the CDC and our own health committee of the church how we are to behave in order to keep a safe environment. So the Lehigh Church has chosen to follow these practices and be good custodians of our community's health. Toward the twin purposes of this end, therefore, for the past 4 weeks, I've been in consultation with Pastor Andre and our lead elders, as well as the entire eldership cadre of our church. Each elder has been assigned responsibilities in order to ensure that we keep connected with each other and effectively administer the ministries of our church. I've requested of each elder to use various technological platforms available to us to figure out how we have our group meetings, how we have our committee meetings, and how we have our Sabbath school class, and how we can hear each other's voice and see each other. Our posture is known as the Lehigh Connect, using all these platforms that social media and technology has afforded us. So Sabbath School and Personal Ministries, Divine Service, and Youth Forum, which normally function on Sabbaths, will not be lost. Your elders and your Sabbath School teachers are charged with connecting with you. And one of the reasons for this charge is that we can get to be able to know each other's numbers and ways to connect and call and talk with each other. Because I'm seeking that we find ways to encourage each other and support each other and lift up each other. So I thank all of you who have already been doing so. And there's some of you who are doing what I love. You're thinking of somebody and you're calling them. In this time of isolation, the more calls we can put out there, the more YouTubes we can use, the more Zoom conversations we can effect. All this will help us to have a happy time together of social connection. It is very important that we do this in order to encourage fellowship, worship, and effective conversation. And this effective conversation allows for the presence of feeling levels and nonverbal expressions, which will enhance the connect and the caring and encouraging amongst our small groups. I'm desirous that we minister to our community as well. So I have asked for consciousness and intentionality towards that end, so that our neighbors can receive from us necessary spiritual support, care, and concern for their temporal needs. And I'm desirous that our collective well-being be enhanced. The Lehigh members and attendees, along with friends of the church, are all subject to health and financial and economic difficulties as we go through this crisis. We will find ways to serve the purposes of God and keep focus on his care and ministry. I know it will be different and difficult under these circumstances which we are asked to live by the various authorities of our state and our country. So please embrace these times as times for faith, not fear, as times when wisdom does not negate faith. As our lead elders have said to each other, it is a time of opportunity amidst crisis. These are extraordinary times. Let us not miss opportunities to uphold each other in positive messaging. The Lehigh Connect concept, which we are promoting through our church eldership, our webpage, and our various platforms of technology, are all designed to keep us together, not to negate, not for negative messaging or criticisms and indictments. This is not the Lehigh culture. I learned that a long time ago. I learned that there's so much good in the worst of us and so much bad in the best of us, that it does not behove any of us to speak evil of the rest of us. Many have found Christ here in our church. Many have grown spiritually at our church. Many have found comfort amongst our brothers and sisters. Many have been helped in various ways as they have endured crisis. Many have received a listening ear, and many have received a word of encouragement here in our fellowship and worship experience, and much of this has been intentional. So very many young and old and in between are better because God has used frail instruments on his behalf in his service of love to others here. So let us keep focus. We need each other to survive. So again, let's call and talk to each other, text, FaceTime, give virtual hugs, and keep us loving in the community of faith. We are not to spiritually or socially distance ourselves from each other. In reality, when you really stop to think about it, what we are being asked to do is to observe physical distance, really not social distance. You see, what we intend to do through the Lehigh Connect, therefore, is to enhance our fellowship and our worship. I've come to embrace the concept that physical distance is an opportunity for divine nearness. So let us get closer to God in our homes and with each other across the telephone lines and develop divine nearness as we are physically distanced from each other. One more thing. As pastors, Pastor Andre and myself and the lead elders, and as the eldership board has met and as a church board, we recognize that many are hurting by loss of jobs and depleting financial resources. To that end, we're endeavoring to be true to our motto, open hearts. Here we believe in and we emphasize worship. Open arms. Here we embrace all who would come through our doors. Open hands. Here we extend a helpful hand and a helping hand whenever and wherever we ascertain need. Now, we're still open hearts because we're worshiping online. We're still open arms because we have invited and we have had people join us in our Sabbath school classes through social media. Open Hands has led us to embark on a helping hand project for our congregation. Our desire is to fund each church family and regular attendees, head of households with a few dollars, to help with small but needed daily supplies. We're allocating $100 for each family, which you will begin to receive in the mail over the next 2 weeks to tide you over until the government stimulus package becomes a reality. I want you to know this is merely a gesture. And by no means do we intend to give the impression that we, by this amount, solve the individual difficulties we imagine our people are going through. So I want to thank Pastor Andre and for his idea, Ella Campbell, Ella Mears, and Ella Blake for working together on it with the cooperation of Ella Barrett, Brother Klusch, Brother Roger Hamilton, our entire board, and our entire eldership cadre. May these moments be moments of blessing for each of us. In every difficulty, there comes an opportunity. In every challenge, there comes courage, and there comes a conquering moment. And may God comfort you and bless you exponentially. And when you feel that things are getting to you, let's remember that God has given us the spirit of love and a sound mind. May you keep well and may you keep safe. I'm your senior pastor. #He will deliver us. Thank you.